The huge void containing our earth, the sun that warms us, and the moon and the stars that twinkle in the night sky, is known as the universe. But how big is it? This will give you an idea. You may think that the area from one end of the city you live in to the other end is very large. Some of you may have traveled from one end to the other of your country, and you have seen how big it is. Some of you may even have traveled to far-off countries. But do not forget, even if you have gone all around the world, the distances involved are still nothing compared to the vastness of the universe. The space occupied by the Earth in the universe is no bigger than a grain of sand. But how did this giant universe come into existence? In the past, people knew very little about the heavens. The equipment necessary to study the skies was nowhere near as advanced as it is today. That meant that people had very wrong ideas about how the universe first came into being. The worst of these was the idea that the universe had existed forever. In other words, before anyone had been able to study the heavens in depth, various ignorant people said that the universe had no beginning and that it had been in existence for all time. What a ridiculous idea that is, isn't it? Yes, it is ridiculous to claim that the universe had no beginning. Your home or your school were built at a certain time. Your mother, your father, and you yourself have birthdays. In other words, everything, living or otherwise, comes into being at a specific time. The universe had a beginning too. This shows that there is an almighty creator who made the universe out of nothing. That creator is Almighty God, who created us and everything else. The first person to prove that there was a moment when the universe was created was the astronomer Edwin Hubble. He had an enormous telescope. One day in 1929, when he was looking at the sky through the telescope, he realized that the stars were moving. That was no ordinary movement. The stars were constantly moving away from one another. A universe in which everything was moving away from everything else meant a universe that was constantly expanding. It is just like the way a balloon expands when you blow it up. The fact that the stars are constantly moving away from one another shows that they were all together at the very beginning. Do you wonder how that could be? If we could run time backwards, we would see the stars moving closer, back towards one another. That would continue until the whole universe eventually met at a single point. If we went back even further in time, even that single point would disappear. Taking that as their starting point, scientists calculated that 15 billion years ago, all the matter in the universe was concentrated in a space no bigger than a pinhead. How did that tiny point suddenly begin growing? Let's have a look. The universe was created billions of years ago when that tiny point exploded. Lots of fragments were given off and spread off in all directions, constantly moving away from one another. They began to build the universe and the heavenly bodies in it. This explosion that represented the beginning of the universe was given the name Big Bang. However, there is one very interesting mystery here. Explosions are always harmful. Think of a volcanic eruption. Such explosions spread total chaos, with houses being destroyed and trees uprooted. The explosion we know as the Big Bang was far more powerful than billions of volcanoes all put together. But, unlike all other explosions, this one gave rise to the universe. Our Earth, which has been specially prepared for us to live in, also appeared in the wake of that explosion. How could such a perfect order have come about after the Big Bang? Isn't it wonderful? The answer to that question is obvious. It was God who created the universe out of nothing in a huge explosion. And, of course, it was God who built the perfect order in it. The order in the universe is proof of the power and knowledge of God. God tells us about this in our sacred book, the Quran. God created the heavens and the earth with truth. There is certainly a sign in that for the believers.